I will now take the precedent for this meeting of the Planning Committee held on 11th October 2022. The following members are present: Councillors Ali Callison, Ralph Barker, Arch Buchanan, Ross Clark. We have apologies from Councillor Jerry Convery. Councillor Margaret Cowie is present. We have apologies from Councillor Maureen Devlin, and Councillor Bert Thompson is attending as a substitute. Councillor Mary Donnelly is present. Councillor Joe Fagan is not present. Councillors Gladys Ferguson Miller and Elise Frame are present. We have apologies from Councillor Fulton. Councillor Shalene Handybod is not present. Councillors Mark Horsham and Ross Lambie are both present. We have apologies from Councillor Monique McAdams. Councillors Leslie MacDonald, David McLaughlin, Richard Nelson and Norman Ray are all present. We have apologies from Councillor John Ross. Councillor Julia Mars is attending as a substitute. And Councillors Dr Ali Salamati, Graham Scott, David Shearer, Helen Toner and David Watson are all present. Thank you, and I will now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. Just to move on then, agenda item 1, any declarations of interest? Councillor Horsham.
Thanks, Chair. Can I declare an interest in item 19? I'm a trustee on the Hagshaw Wind Farm Trust. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horsham. We do have a couple of... And just bear with us, we are still having some technical issues with the system this morning. So, Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to declare an item on a declaration on item 19. I have a close family employment connection to one of the stakeholders, Scottish Power Renewables.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. Noted. Councillor Donnelly.
Morning, Chair. I'm not sure if I'm declaring an interest, but I have been in communication, although I've not given my point of view. And I don't have the papers up. I'm waiting for them to be sent to me again. But it's the one to do with Argyll Drive.
It's agenda item 3.
Right. I haven't given my point of view to people, but they have been communicating to me in regards to their objection to item 3. So can I get guidance from you?
Councillor Donnelly, it's for you to take the test. It's not for me to determine whether you sit in this committee or not. That's for you to take the test, and you yourself. If you think that there is an interest in that party, then that is entirely up to you. I can't make a decision for you. You have to make your own decision. You have to do the test that's out there.
Right.
So I'll leave that decision up to you. It's your decision, not mine.
Okay, that's fine.
Can I just clarify, you declaring an interest, or you just...
I don't need to, because
okay.
I haven't given my point of view. I've
Thank
just
you.
received correspondence.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Lambie.
Yep, item 19 on the Hagshaw. I'm a member of the trustee of the Hagshaw Trust. I'm a member of the trust.
Thank you, Councillor Lambie. That's noted, so that'll be a register of interest as well. Thank you. Agenda item 2, pages 5 to 10 in your pack. Minutes of the previous meeting. I'll move that as absolutely correct. Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 3, application P212167, pages 11 to 24, and that is the 20 Argyll Drive in Hamilton, and I'll pass that over to Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of a detached property to a retail unit. The property is known as Cruise House and is located on Argyle Drive, Hamilton. The property is situated within a residential area and was last used to provide after-school care and also as a bereavement centre. The building was originally erected in the early 1980s as a doctor's surgery, and historical maps indicate that there was a retail unit at this location back in the 50s and 60s. The proposal is to convert the building into a retail unit serving the local area. The majority of alterations would be internal, although a new shop front would be installed. In terms of the local plan, the site is identified as part of the general urban area where this type of use can be supported. In terms of representations, 24 objections to the proposal were received, along with a petition containing 67 signatories. The relevant points are summarised in section 4 of the report. In addition, it should be noted that a request for a hearing was made by an objector. However, following consideration of this request, it was declined. In general land use terms and policy terms, the principle of a retail unit at this location is acceptable. The external alterations proposed are minimal, and the appearance of the surrounding residential area will not be altered significantly. Whilst it is noted that works are alleged to have been undertaken within the building, strictly they do not require permission, and it is the change of use which requires permission. Overall, it is considered that the application complies with relevant local plan policies and is unlikely to have a detrimental impact on the amenity of the surrounding residential area. It is therefore recommended that the application is granted, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Bernard. Any questions, comments? Councillor Donnelly. Councillor
Yeah,
Donnelly.
I'm aware Rhodes has agreed to this, but where the shop, the change of use to a shop is situated, the road is blocked off. It is very narrow streets, so you're going to have big lorries coming in for delivery, and they're not going to have anywhere to park. They actually have to come up on the pavement. And if cars are coming to the shop to access the shop, there is very little places for the cars to park. So I'm a bit concerned that that was agreed as okay, where it's right up against the houses. There is no flexibility there.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. I'll just ask Fraser to, from Rhodes, just to comment. Fraser? If you just press your microphone, Fraser, and I'll see if I can get it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've obviously been out and had a look at this site. When we've been out, there's been adequate capacity on street for cars to park outside the shop. We'd also just highlight that this is in a residential area, so the vast majority of people will kind of walk or cycle to the shop, so we don't anticipate high numbers of cars parking, given the size and nature of the shop. In terms of servicing, we're not expecting large lorries to arrive to service the shop, and this is because it's a relatively small shop and it's likely going to involve a small van rather than a sort of large vehicle. There are turning facilities or turning areas within the residential area where it's safe to make that manoeuvre. And whilst the road is narrow, it's still wide enough to allow two cars to pass each other. And the road is very, very quiet, so we don't anticipate any issues with that.
Councillor Donnelly?
Yeah, just from Bernard's comments, it sounds to me like he's assuming that people will walk to that shop. I have been round at the shop, I have been concerned. It was, as it said, the bereavement centre and Cruise beforehand. I am a bit concerned, and I think a site visit would have possibly been useful. I have been round, and I don't I am a bit concerned about this development.
Councillor Donnelly, are you putting forward any amendments, or
I'll
Or you just want
propose
or you would
I
you like a
propose a deferment till we have a site visit.
okay? Have you got a seconder, Councillor Donnelly?
I don't know.
MD looking to second to Councillor David Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I think I share some of the concerns of Councillor Donnelly, and to say that folk will walk, I'm not quite convinced that's going to be the case. I stay in a area, residential area with a local shop, and very few folk actually walk to it. You see cars driving up and down all the time, and plus lorries dropping off goods, etc. At the moment, it's okay to say this is maybe a small local shop, but what's to stop it being turned into one of the sort of national small shop distributors, and then they deliver by large lorries, etc. And to me, the site doesn't lend itself to a shop. Just looking at it, obviously not seeing it on the ground, but looking at the map and reading some of the objections, and I would be tended to second Councillor Donnelly. That I think we should make ourselves fully aware of the situation here, because as it stands, it might be okay, a small shop run by locals, etc. I don't know, but if it was ever to change to one of the Spar type shops or others, they tend to use larger delivery lorries, and we're stacking up problems then.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. So you're seconding that amendment from Councillor Donnelly. I'll bring in Councillor David McLaughlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Just waiting for it to come in, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good.
David, you're fine. You're free to go.
Yeah. I'm quite astonished at the Roads Department's assessment of this. Not the first time I've been astonished at some of the judgments they've made. I know this area very well. I travel on that road several times a week, and I've never passed it once where there isn't cars parked directly opposite the proposed shop. There's people who live there and their cars are parked here constantly, so you can never pass without waiting for vehicles coming in their direction. So no matter who it is that's going to deliver, they're going to have a serious problem trying to get goods into that shop. And I don't accept for a minute that that's a terrible assumption to make, that it's only going to be small vans. Any companies that make deliveries will choose whatever delivery vehicle they have, and it's not going to be small vans. It's going to be at least 7.5 ton trucks. And regardless, you're never going to be able to park the car or the van at that shop to make a delivery. Whatever deliveries are going to be made, they're going to have to be travelling along the pavement, because there's always parked cars opposite. So I don't know when Fraser's visited and seen it that you can always pass, 2 cars can pass, because I've never seen it, and I use it several times a week, Chair. I think Roads Assessment have got this one completely wrong.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Donnelly, you have popped up on screen. Are you looking to come back in?
Just to, I'm echoing.
Not here, you're not, no.
Not there, right?
No.
Just to say that I totally concur with Councillor McLaughlin's comments. When I have been out to the site, it has been big lorries that are on the pavement. It is not wee white vans. So I do think they've got this assessment wrong.
Thanks, Councillor Donnelly. Points are noted, and you also have a seconder for your amendment. So I'm going to move that we grant the detailed plan and permission.
Seconded.
So we will then go to the vote, and I'll ask Stuart just to confirm where we are. So if you just bear with us, because we did have some technical issues yesterday when we went to the vote. So please just bear with us just for a second, and it should come up on your screen and on your station in front of you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Just first of all, just to point out to members that Councillor Shalene Handybode is actually present at the meeting. I did say earlier when I took the head on that she wasn't here, but she has since joined. Also, just to clarify, I'm assuming there's no other hands up, so there's no other amendments being proposed. So the motion proposed by Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Allison is to grant approval of the application subject to conditions, and the amendment is that the application be deferred to allow a site visit to be carried out. That's been proposed by Councillor Donnelly and seconded by Councillor Watson. If you just bear with me, I'll commence the vote. You able to share the... Can you share the screen? Okay, sorry about that. The vote is now live and would ask that members please select their voting preference. Can I just clarify if everybody's voted? Looks as if 2 members still haven't voted. It still looks as if 1 member hasn't cast their vote.
It looks like somebody hasn't voted yet. This is just the last call for anybody who hasn't voted. If you haven't voted, this is your last chance, and then we will go to the result.
Okay, I'm now going to close the vote. So 5 members have voted in favour of the motion and 16 members have voted in favour of the amendment. I would therefore declare the amendment carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We will move on to agenda item number 4, which is pages 25 to 36 in your pack. Application P210521, erection of 3-car garage and store with vehicular access from Moss Road. And I'll ask Ian to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. This application's for the erection of a 3-car garage and store with vehicular access from Moss Road, and it's at 9 Newton Road, Straven. The application site consists of a rear garden at 9 Newton Road, Straven, and it partly incorporates a grassed area adjacent to Moss Road to the south and covers an area of approximately 540 square metres. The existing house at Newton Road is situated to the north of the house plot, and to the rear garden slopes down to a stream in the middle of the garden referred to as the Goods Burn. The associated garden rises again to the rear, which is the south, towards Moss Road. This area in question was purchased from the council for use as garden ground. The applicant proposes to take access from Moss Road to the garage and provide the necessary turning area, and a mature tree sits to the outside of this site to the east. So the applicants propose a split-level two-storey garage within the area previously acquired by the applicant to utilise as garden ground. The garage will cover an area of 60 square metres and will be a height of 3.74 metres when viewed from the north, east and west, and 2.92 metres when viewed to the south. Approximately 1.3 metres of the garage will be underground, and the proposed garage will be accessed via its own separate access from Ross Road to the south-west. In terms of the planning background, a previous application for a change of open space to garden ground was granted in 2004 but was never implemented. And the applicant also has a current live application for an extension to the existing dwelling. There's been a number of consultations carried out, however there was no issues raised. In terms of representations, we've received 13 letters of representation. The points raised are summarised in section 5.1. Just to pick out a couple, one referring to the applicant's motives to potentially move towards erecting a dwelling on the site, and also that the land was sold for the purposes of garden ground. I would clarify that that's a legal matter and not a material planning consideration. In terms of the summary, the applicant seeks the planning permission for the erection of a three-car garage. And whilst the property is situated onto the front 9 Newton Road, they're utilising an access from the rear which leads out onto Moss Road. Currently on Newton Road there are a number of properties that don't have sufficient parking, so the applicant is proposing the garage and the turning area to provide vehicular access from the rear. The applicant is therefore, in terms of the design, the proposed garage will be constructed from metal containers and will be clad in timber. Whilst this type of design is not necessarily common in residential areas, it is contemporary and the timber finish is sympathetic to the existing landscaping. In addition, the flat roof of the garage and the timber finish will reduce its visual impact. Whilst there are a few buildings in the gardens of the properties at Newton Road, a domestic garage is not uncommon for the type of development that we would normally expect in a residential area. As previously mentioned, adjacent to the east of the site is a mature beech tree which is currently covered by a tree preservation order. The tree does sit out with the site, however, but a condition has been attached to ensure that the access road is constructed appropriately to avoid damaging the tree or its roots. So in summary, following a full detailed assessment of the proposed development, it's considered that it would have no significant adverse impact on residential or visual amenity, and as such the granting of planning permission is recommended. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I'll open up for any comments or questions for the officer. No comments or questions. I'll move that we grant detailed plan permission subject to conditions based on the conditions attached.
Seconded.
Otherwise minded? Agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item 5, application P220471, pages 37 to 54 in your pack, erection of domestic wind turbine in Bothwell, and I will ask Bernard to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to the erection of a domestic wind turbine at a detached dwelling house located at 1 Fernhill Grange, Bothwell. The property is located within a residential area, a short distance from the nearby conservation area. The mast of the proposed turbine will measure 6 metres in height, and the total height of the turbine to the tip of its blades will be 7.5 metres. The turbine will feature 3 blades. It's proposed that the mast will be located in the southeast corner of the application site. In terms of background, a previous application for the erection of a wind turbine at 1 Fernhill Grange was submitted in 2009 and was approved by the local area committee, subject to several conditions. Should consent be granted, many of these same conditions would be imposed on the consent. The current application is identical to that approved in 2009, both in terms of the positioning of the turbine and its height. Consultation was undertaken with the Council's Environmental Services, who have not objected to the proposal, subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions. There have been 23 representations submitted in relation to the application, and the reasons for objecting in the Council's response are summarised in section 5 of the report. Taking account of the relevant local plan policies, it is considered that the proposed wind turbine is acceptable. The turbine will not have a material or adverse impact upon the existing levels of residential amenity. Visually, it's not considered to be intrusive and will not represent an over-dominant feature within the local environment. The turbine is to have a maximum height of 7.5 metres to the tip of the blade, which is approximately 1.9 metres lower than the highest point of the existing dwelling on site. Furthermore, the turbine will be well screened from most viewpoints due to the existing trees on site. Both factors combined reduce its visual dominance overall. The wind turbine itself is of a domestic scale and is unlikely to be any more visually intrusive than other development which already exists in the area. In terms of government guidance and policy, strong support is provided for the development of micro-renewables. Due to the wind resource which Scotland has, the development of domestic wind turbines is encouraged. It's considered by the government that they do not represent an intrusive feature within the built form when sited appropriately. Overall, and having due regard to the development plan and all other material planning considerations, the recommendation is to approve this application as it complies with local plan policy, government guidance, and will not have an adverse impact upon amenity. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. Any comments or questions for Officer? Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I'm maybe just looking for a bit of guidance here. I mean, I know it says in the report that it's uncommon to have this type of turbine in a residential area. Do we have any at all? Because if not, we could be opening up floodgates here, and albeit we can say that every planning decision is taken on its own merit, but if we start accepting this type of development and in residential areas, potentially we could have a flood of them. And also, I seem to recall there was a primary school in East Kilbride, and I think it might be Blacklaw off the top of my head, that had a wind turbine in it, and we had to curtail the operation of it due to the noise for residential properties a good number of years ago. So I don't know if that's relevant as well, noise, but I'm just a bit nervous with this, that we're starting a trend here that might have areas starting to want this sort of wind turbine getting put up in gardens.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. We did have a conversation about this at the pre-agenda meeting as well, but I'll ask Bernard just to come in and give you the aspect from the local development plan and the kind of legal aspect round about the environmental as well, because I think that comes under environmental, and I'm sure Bernard will touch on that in his response.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things to pick up on in response. Other than the previous approval for this actual site, albeit it was back in 2009, I'm not aware of any other similar proposals in domestic properties. Probably the most similar type is maybe in a more rural area where some of the farm properties got turbines put up within the steading or close to the steading, etc. in the past. I think there was either one or two turbines that the primary in East Kilbride, and I think I'm not sure of the background to the reasons why, but I think they've both been removed since the time that they were erected. In terms of noise that you'd mentioned, we did undertake consultation with environmental services, and we have attached conditions to do with noise, so that it would, if operating, it would have to adhere to those to ensure that it wasn't causing nuisance or any unacceptable impacts on the surrounding neighbourhood.
Councillor Watson, supplementary. Thanks,
Chair. I'm minded to move against this paper and reject it on the grounds of basic public nuisance, if you want, and that the potential for it to generate the noise it would be create an inconvenience for local residents. I think past experience shows us that is the case, and I don't want the floodgates opening for this type of development in residential areas, much as I'm supportive of wind power, but I think there's a place for it, and I don't think in the middle of residential areas is the right place at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Just before I look to see if you've got a second, I'm just going to ask Monica from a legal perspective, if that's okay, and then we'll look and see if you've got a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the motion as put forward by Councillor Watson, I would just reiterate that environmental services have not raised any issues in terms of potential nuisance and have included conditions in order for such an issue to be monitored. In terms of nuisance, it's a very high test, and it's a legal test in terms of what constitutes nuisance. I would also say, sorry, I think Bernard's throat's catching. I would also say, in terms of reasons for refusal, the committee has to ensure that all reasons for refusal are proper planning reasons. Otherwise, obviously, any decision can be challenged. There is also where proper planning reasons are not used for a reason for refusal. There also is the risk of a claim of expenses against the council in relation to the reason for refusal. Therefore, as I said, I would just reiterate the fact that Environmental Health have looked at the application and haven't raised any concerns in relation to the issue that Councillor Watson is raising as a reason for refusal, and in support of his motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Monica. And saying all that as well, I suppose it's up to this committee to decide what route we would like to take. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to ask if there's a seconder for Councillor Watson.
Can you just clarify, you still wish to move that?
Yeah.
Based on Monica's?
Okay. We do have a couple of people online, so I'll see if we have a seconder. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Chair. I don't remember if it was mentioned during Bernard's addressing of the report about the height of the wind turbine, the height of the structure, and if it's attached to the building, or is it freestanding, what diameter the turbine blades are, etc. If there's any detail there. In regards to the comments that Councillor Watson was making, I've got a little bit of experience, not with residential wind turbines, but one of the main reasons where people who I know of who had thought about installing a wind turbine changed their mind because of the terrible noise that they make. The very large ones that you see in the wind farms, it's more there is a noise from them, but it's a different type of noise. The smaller the turbine, the faster it turns, and there's a kind of vibrating sort of sound comes off it. And I wonder if I would like that next door to me when I was trying to get a night's sleep. So I'm quite concerned about, as was mentioned, setting a precedent. If this was granted, it would be much harder to deal with it. If it did transpire later on that it was making quite a lot of noise, perhaps might I suggest that we try and find out a bit more information about who designs them, what tests have been done in the particular wind turbine that the applicant is proposing to use, and then we can take some data from that before we make a decision here. I'm sympathetic to Councillor Watson's motion to refuse it, but I also hear what Monica's saying, but perhaps it might be better to defer this until we have more information about the actual apparatus that's going to be used.
Thanks, Councillor McLaughlin. I think your first question round about the height is on page 39, 2.2, that the mast of the proposed turbine will measure 6 metres in height. But I'll get Bernard just to come in and clarify that. Just for my own clarity, Councillor McLaughlin, did you second Councillor Watson's motion or amendment, or are you putting forward a further amendment for a deferment?
I didn't second David's motion. I was suggesting it might be a better idea, but I haven't formally made that motion for a deferral. But for clarity, yes, I will move that we defer until we have more detail, more information, more data from perhaps the manufacturer of these machines, because they're not silent. They make a noise. We do know that they make a noise. Is that going to be acceptable to neighbours or even the applicant themselves? Anybody living nearby at night time when this noises continues if it's windy? So I would propose then that we defer it until we get more data.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll let Bernard just to come in to answer some of your points first of all, and then we'll look to see if you have a seconder for your amendment. Bernard?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, it's a 6 metre high mast and the turbine would be attached to that, and it would take the overall height to the top of the blade to 7.5 metres at the highest point. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, you anything else on that, or just to move along? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Donnelly.
Hello. Yes, Chair, I'm mindful of both. And it was just, I was going to ask David if he would support deferment. And because I'm not technical, I would have also moved that we do a site visit on this once we get all the details that David's asked for, David McLaughlin. But I don't know, would David Watson be willing to go down that road of supporting deferment?
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Watson, can I just bring in just to clarify if you're willing to accept any of these? Councillor Watson.
Yeah, Chair, I would withdraw my motion and I would second David McLaughlin's. I think still got an opportunity at a later date to move against this if I'm not satisfied against it. But I'm happy to accept and I take on board the legal advice as well that it gives us more opportunity to maybe look at the noise in detail. I think Davy's right, and I think the larger turbines, it's more a whooshing sound you get from them, whereas the smaller ones, I think it's more a clicking sound you get. And while Environmental Services have made comment about it, it's about a noise level, and it's not about an annoyance level of noise, it's about a specific noise level. And I think, yeah, we need to get more detail on that before we're satisfied. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'm just going to bring in Councillor Alec Allison first of all. Councillor Allison.
Thanks, Chair. It's just for information. I happen to have a small turbine within 50 metres of my farmhouse. Now, okay, it's not an urban area, but I wouldn't know it's there. Small size, indoors, nothing at all, and outdoors, you hear very, very little. The report you'll get back will be detailed, complex, and without misjudging any of your standards, I am not sure it will add anything to what environmental health can give us guidance on. And if they're laying down particular rules, I don't see what extra information is going to give us, because environmental health, with their expertise, will know whether it goes out with the bounds of reasonable, which I certainly don't see with ours.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. Councillor Watson, and then I'll get Councillor Clark and I'm going to try and tie this up. Councillor Watson.
Yes, Chair, just to come back to Alec there, I mean, with all due respect to Environmental Services, I'm sure they were satisfied there was no noise coming from the ones in the primary schools in East Kilbride, but we had to remove them, as we've heard earlier. Cheers.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just very briefly to note that it does say that conditions will be and can be attached related to noise, and that further information will be submitted to the planning authority. So I don't believe it's be strong enough to reject the application. Thanks. Or defer, sorry.
Councillor Clark, for your comments. Just for clarity, Councillor Donnelly did mention during her conversation that she would like a site visit. Can I just clarify, Councillor Donnelly, that is that part of what you are looking for? Just before we go to the vote. Councillor Donnelly. Okay, I'm going to move that we grant detailed planning permission subject to conditions based on the conditions attached.
Seconded.
Councillor David McLaughlin, I'll just bring you in just before we move to the vote.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if a site visit to the location would be useful, but if I'm not being too flippant, perhaps we could organise a site visit to Alex Farm and they could put the kettle on for us. But 50 metres is quite a distance, Alec. I don't know what size of garden this property has, but 50 metres is quite a distance. I would imagine that this is going to be much closer to the residences than 50 metres. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. I'm just going to hand over to Stuart just to go through some procedural, and then we'll go to the vote.
Okay, can we just clarify, Councillor Donnelly, that then that you weren't moving another amendment in terms of proposing a site visit? Okay, so the motion proposed by Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Allison is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions attached. And the amendment proposed by Councillor McLaughlin and seconded by Councillor Watson is that the application be deferred on the grounds that further technical specification is provided on the turbine. If you just bear with me, I'll commence the vote. Okay, the vote is now live. If members could please indicate your voting preference. Thank you. Okay, I understand that Councillor Barker is having some technical issues and is not in the meeting just now, so I'm going to stop the vote. I'd advise members that 8 members have voted in favour of the motion and 13 members have voted in favour of the amendment, which I declare carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Move on to agenda item 6. Application P212093, pages 55 to 66 in your pack. Erection of 37 dwelling houses and 16 flats with associated roads, landscape and infrastructure in Hamilton. And I'll ask Bernard to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the approval of matters specified in conditions and relates to land within the Hamilton Community Growth Area. The application site extends to approximately 1.9 hectares and comprises an area of vacant grassland which is located to the north of Meiklearnock Road. The development is for the erection of 37 dwelling houses and 16 flats with associated roads, landscaping and infrastructure. The proposal relates to the provision of a range of accommodation for the social rented market and includes a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings in the form of terraces, semi-detached and detached properties. These dwellings would be 2 storeys in height. In addition, the development includes 1 and 2 bedroom cottage flats. Externally, the properties are proposed to be finished in a combination of render, stone, facing brick and glazing panels. Parking would be provided for each property. The development includes the formation of a new vehicular and pedestrian access to the development from Meiklearnock Road and other pedestrian and vehicle links into the wider community growth area. In terms of the local plan, the site is identified as part of the Hamilton Community Growth Area, which supports the erection of residential development. There have been no objections from consultees or members of the public in relation to the proposal. The proposal relates to the creation of a high-quality social housing development on a vacant site, which will provide affordable accommodation for the social rented sector. The design, layout and general impact of the development is considered to be acceptable, and the proposals comply with the relevant policies contained in the adopted local development plan. It is recommended that planning consent be granted, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Bernard. Any questions or comments? Councillor David Shearer. Councillor Shearer? That's you. Oh. Go on. Councillor Shearer, that's you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I would just like to ask Bernard, has any thought been given to public transport from this site into the town centre? And if not, why not?
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Fraser? Fraser. I'll bring Fraser in first. Councillor Shearer. Fraser?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, public transport has been thought about for the Hamilton Community Growth Area as a whole. Meiklearnock Road, which is the road that will serve this development, has been constructed with bus infrastructure, so it will have raised curbs, bus stop locations and bus shelters along it. The kind of ongoing scenario as more development gets built out is that it's anticipated that some of the local services will be extended up to the roundabout. It's very close to where this site's located, but it will also serve the remainder of the other houses that have been built within the Hamilton Community Growth Area.
Thank you, Fred. Councillor Shearer, does that answer your...
It goes part of the way. I'm glad to see that at least public transport has been taken into consideration. I'm a bit concerned that we are waiting until the entire site is developed before bus services would be extended. Is there no scope for developers' contribution to assist that process in subsidising a bus in the short term until demand is built up?
I'll ask Bernard just to respond to that, Councillor Shearer. Bernard?
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to that, obviously Fraser touched on the bus situation and looking forward to it. In terms of the contributions, that's not necessarily something that was earmarked when the agreement for the site was made, that there would be a subsidised bus route. So it's not something that we could look to go back and sort of retrofit, if that makes sense. As we move forward, obviously, we want to encourage it and make it as accessible as possible. And so some of the things that Fraser was mentioning, just about having the infrastructure there so that buses could come on board. There's another couple of applications that are further on in the agenda, but they also relate to the community growth area. And some of those would include further infrastructure improvements, which would make it more likely that a local bus operator was to come on board and would make it easier for them to actually service the development.
Thank you. Councillor Sherry, any supplementaries?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly?
Yeah, I'm just mindful about the road up there. We already had discussions with roads. The community council have raised real problems with the amount of travel, the amount of footfall and cars up there. So I would support David's point on public transport going forward, but also to be mindful that the community council has been in conversations in regards to some of the issues that they've had.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. That's noted. Councillor Thompson, Bert Thompson.
Aye, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. The education there, I take it, maybe I've missed it. Everybody's quite happy there are plenty of places for school and potential school children. Is that correct? Thank you.
I'll ask Bernard, but yeah, it is included in the. But I'll ask Bernard just to respond to.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to confirm that the original approval for the CGA was, I think, granted back in 2017, and as part of that, the education facilities in the surrounding area was looked at, and contributions have been taken and will continue to come in as a sort of roof tax paid in arrears, and there were, where it was required, projects were identified.
Thanks, Bernard. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toner?
Hi, just a couple of points. I actually know the area well. It's just in my ward sort of thing. There are a lot of problems with the development up there, and I really welcome the fact that it's social housing, because we absolutely need more social housing, so that's absolutely fantastic. However, the actual site there, as far as I can see, is down on a dip. As far as I can remember, and it is prone to flooding, which is an issue. The road itself just now is exceptionally busy with, and there's sort of roadworks and things like that on it, because there is development right the way down that road. And I think actually at that point there was temporary traffic lights where that's going to, where that development's coming. I'm mindful of the properties that are further towards the Mutton Hole Road, the original properties from that area. They are having quite significant disruption to their lives at the moment, with the lorries and things like that coming up and down to the sites further down. And I'm just concerned that while we really want the social housing, and while it's great to see all the development up there, that there's not a lot of consideration taken for the people that are already there and further down the road. The other sort of point that I've got is there doesn't seem to be any like local shops or anything like that being put in anywhere on the site at all, which to me again is a bit of an issue, meaning somebody would need to actually get in their car and drive. And if you know the area at all, as soon as the weather turns, you really need a vehicle or a local shop. So I'm just, while I welcome the development and things like that, I'm just a bit concerned how the developer's going to treat, do you know that way, going to be sympathetic to the residents of the area. They've not had a great time with the developers there up to now, and I'm just concerned that this is another developer coming in that's going to add to their compound the problems on Meaclernock Road.
I don't know if Bernard wants to comment on any of that. Bernard? Just give us a wee second, Bernard. It's just... Oh.
wee bit of help up at the back. The screen's frozen.
If they're there now, are they?
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to a couple of those points, I know that I've previously met with yourself, another ward member and the local community council just to talk over some of the issues, and we have previously been in touch with the developers just to raise these issues. Some of them have been a bit of a recurring theme, you know, and there will be measures in place, the transport, traffic management plan, etc., to look at how construction traffic maybe services the site, accesses it, and you know, we're looking at how we monitor that and do it effectively as well. So there's some of those things that we discussed in the recent meeting, and it's very much aware of that as part of this development and other things going on in the community growth area, and we'll try our best to manage that process. There, unfortunately, in the nature of construction and the nature of change, there will be a degree of disruption, but you know, we'll try and work with you going forward and the community council just to try and see if there are any issues where we can get involved and try and manage that process, and also be in contact with the relevant developers to try and make sure that they minimise any disruption to the surrounding area.
Thank you. You're looking for a supplementary?
Yeah, Bernard, thanks for that. No, it was just to say, obviously we can't do anything about the developers, that the planning permission's already been done. It was done several years ago. But just if we could be really mindful when if this gets granted, that we actually keep on top of this one, which we're obviously, this is what's in front of us just now. So it's just to make sure that we're keeping on top of this one. And then I'm quite happy. Obviously, social housing is urgently needed in the area. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Toner. Comments are noted. I've got Councillor David McLaughlin, Councillor Donnelly online, and then I am going to draw a close to that. So, Councillor David McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Toner was saying there. It's a very welcome report. In particular, the social housing aspect of it. I was speaking to the developer only yesterday, and they're quite keen to get started as soon as possible in this development once planning consent is granted, if it's granted today. I think it may have been discussed before that the road leading up to the estate and continuing on beyond that up towards Mutton Hole Road, now there's been upgrades made to the road. I think there's a roundabout currently under construction to help with that. But when you go past the existing dwellings that are there, the road gets really, really narrow, and then inevitably people are going to gravitate, the higher up they are on the estate, they're more likely to gravitate towards Mutton Hole Road to get access to whether it's East Kilbride or Straven or Hamilton, whatever. But it's a very, very narrow road. It's almost a single track, and if you meet a construction truck coming in a direction, it's really difficult. They've actually got to leave the road. So I wonder if there's any plan. And I'm not objecting to the construction traffic. I mean, you know, if you're going to build houses, you're going to have to. It's a necessary evil. It's something we've got to accept. But after completion of whenever it may be completed, or whatever planning applications come in the future, are we going to do something with that road to make that road a bit safer? The small part of road that's left between the development and Mutton Hole Road. I don't know if Bernard knows about it, or perhaps Roads can address it. Thanks, Chair.
I'll ask Fraser just to come in first.
Thank you, Chair. As we'll lead on to in some of the other agenda items for the Hamilton Community Growth Area, it's probably quite relevant to mention it now, but that roundabout you mentioned, Councillor McLaughlin, will then lead on to Straven Road. So that will be the start of that. Now, I understand obviously that some traffic may choose to go up towards Mutton Hole directly. There is a contribution for Mutton Hole Road and in terms of the Section 75 agreement to carry out some improvements. It's maybe something that we could take back to the developers and find out short term whether there may be something that could be done with the construction vehicles going up there to try and improve it as best we can, because it is the best route for construction traffic to use, because it affects the fewest people. But unfortunately, there's not any other options to construct the development. That answers the question.
Supplementary, Chair.
Yeah, quickly, Dave.
Yeah, so thanks, Fraser. That gives me a bit of relief. So is this the roundabout? Is there going to be a road from the roundabout going south east, if you like, towards Straven Road? Is that where it's cutting across the fields?
Is it?
Yes, that's right. Yes, there'll be a road that connects from that roundabout to Straven Road.
That's great news, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll bring in Councillor Donnelly, then we'll bring this item agenda to a close. Councillor Donnelly?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I do totally agree with Councillor Toner's comments, but we did recently make an arrangement for an online meeting with the Community Council, and can I ask if that could be made available again so that their feelings and views are getting kept on board while this development goes forward? Because I do support social housing and I don't want to knock that because of that, you know, but there is problems.
I'll ask Bernard to see if he can give any comments to Bernard.
Yes, Councillor Donnelly, you know, that's something that we'll work with the local community council, and I've actually got correspondence from them regarding the CGA, so as part of that I can respond and we can look at either a future series or certainly having another meeting just to look at some of the things and the future developments that will be occurring as well.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Okay, I'm going to move that we grant marks specified in conditions subject to conditions attached.
Seconded.
Everybody agree? Agreed. Thank you. We're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. Toilet break. We'll meet back at 11:10. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Just make sure everybody is back in the meeting again. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back. We're going to go to items 7 and 8. We're going to present these two items together to try and speed up a lot of time as well, but we will move these items separately. So that is items 7 and 8 is pages 67 to 82 and 83 to 100. Application P211811 and P211812, and that's Cala Homes and Barrett Homes and Hamilton, and I'll ask Bernard to present these agenda items.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, I'll deal with both items 7 and 8 as they are both within the Hamilton Community Growth Area, have been submitted by the same applicants and are generally covered by the same policies, and the sites are joined together. So as said, both applications are located within the Hamilton Community Growth Area and in former agricultural land, which is located to the west of Straven Road. Application P21-1811 seeks permission for the erection of 153 dwellings, which includes a range of semi-detached and detached house types, which will provide a mix of 3, 4 and 5 bedroom accommodation. The proposed dwellings are 2 storeys in height, and several dwelling types have integrated garages and some have associated detached garages. Each property would benefit from dedicated parking. The dwellings are 2 storeys in height, and externally they're proposed to be finished in a combination of render, stone walling, glazed panels and concrete roof tiles. In addition, some of the dwellings are proposed to have photovoltaic panels integrated within the roof structure. The development also includes the formation of a 4-arm roundabout from Straven Road, which links to a primary spine road, which will be an established key route through the Hamilton Community Growth Area. In addition, the proposal includes a suds area to the northeast of the site, along the boundary on the western edge of the site, a new green belt boundary will be formed. Application P211811 seeks permission for a total of 628 units, including an area of social housing. One of the key features of this application is that it includes details for a crossing over the Cadsall Burn, which is a significant aspect of the overall desires and residential development within the community growth area. This crossing, once completed, will allow a link between Meiklearnock Road and Straven Road to be formed, which will be the spine road through the whole development. In terms of the residential properties that are proposed, they're similar to what was described for the previous application. In terms of background on an application for the development of the community growth area was granted consent in May 2017, and that was subject to a legal agreement. The consultation responses are summarised in section 4 of each report, and no objections have been received. A number of conditions are required, and these have been listed at the end of each report. There were no objections to P211811, and 19 representations have been submitted in relation to P211812, with the matters raised summarised in section 5 of the report. The layout and housing proposed within both applications reflects the wider CGA and is generally considered to be acceptable. One of the main factors is to ensure that development considers, and where appropriate, mitigates the resulting impacts of traffic growth and encourages sustainable transport options that take account of the need to provide proper provision for walking, cycling and public transport. The sites are considered to be accessible, and the development would be integrated into transport and walking networks. Through the provision of a crossing over the Cadsall Burn, the two portions of the community growth area can be linked, and the through road will provide direct vehicular access between Straven Road and Meeklernock Road. Conditions can be attached to any consent to ensure that the path layout incorporates the existing right-of-way, an aspiration core path to the north of the site. The phasing of the link over the Cadsall Burn would also be conditioned. In addition, Roads and Transportation Services consider that the proposal is acceptable in terms of access, parking and road safety issues. Whilst there will be a degree of disruption during construction, conditions are proposed which include measures such as the provision and agreement of a traffic management plan. The purpose is to minimise disruption as much as possible during the construction phase of the development. Whilst work has been ongoing within the community growth area for a number of years, it is important that any disruption is minimised, and local ward councillors and the relevant community council recently met with council officers to discuss these matters. It is anticipated that further meetings will be arranged and monitoring undertaken in order to ensure that the development is being undertaken in accordance with the agreed details. The proposals relate to the creation of a high-quality housing development on vacant ground, and the design, layout and general impact of both developments is considered to be acceptable, with the proposals complying with the relevant policies contained in the adopted local development plan. In view of the above, it is recommended that application P21-1811, item 7, be granted subject to conditions, and the decision not issued until such time as an appropriate planning obligation has been concluded. It is also recommended that application P21-1812 be granted subject to conditions. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. Any comments? Councillor Ray.
Hi. So it was just I was wondering about the meaning of a particular point. Point 4.3, it actually appears in both of these reports that environmental services has raised concerns in relation to the potential internal noise levels within some of the dwellings. Now, it seemed to me that was quite an unusual thing to mention, and I was just wondering what the particular relevance of that was.
Thank you, Chair. It just came about, and it was just probably being precautionary in terms of looking at the new housing and just the development itself and the impact from the road serving it, and it's just to make sure that the housing etc has appropriate measures. So sometimes it's that you use a certain type of glazing etc to make sure that within the houses there's not going to be undue disturbance. It's a fairly standard setting, you know. It's an urban development with road and traffic going through it, and it's just to make sure that there's not any undue disturbance to the residential properties.
Right. I understand that now. I was taking it to be that there was noise from inside the house, but I understand now. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Councillor Toner.
Thanks, Chair. Just to sort of go over the same points as we raised prior to that, with the previous application, the concern from the residents and things like that is the same as the development on the other side of Meeklernock Road, with, you know, the sort of transport, the transport links, the roads, where are the roads going, the increased traffic and things like that. It's a bit concerning that the two sites are almost running then back to back. They're in very close proximity, even though they're, you know, on opposite sides of the road. Again, no objection as such, but just a concern that we're going to have the same issues arising here as what we've got on the other side of the road. The other point, though, that I was going to raise is about the Cadsall Burn. Now, I've had residents, and while not declaring an interest, one of my property that I stay in actually has the Cadsall Burn further down the hill running through it. So I do know about the Cadsall Burn, but lots of the residents, well, some of the residents as well have the concern that the Cadsall Burn has in recent years been getting bigger. So I think there's a lot more water flowing through it, and there's a lot more sort of sewage issues and things like that with overflow pipes. They're not, I can't remember the word of them, but the overflow pipes from the main sewers go into Cadsall Burn, and this has been an issue as well. So, and some of the residents are stating it's only happened sort of thing since the work further up Meaclernock Road. So it's just with them, do you know, like building over Cadsall Burn and things like that, that it's a concern. It's a concern. I'm not objecting to it, it's just I am concerned about the effect on the Cadsall Burn and obviously the traffic and things in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. I don't know if that's any questions in there, that's just your observations.
No, I think the questions were answered in the previous point, but it's just a concern for the area.
Noted, thank you. Any further comments? No, I'm going to move these items separately, so I'll move agenda item 7.
Seconded.
Agreed. Agenda item 8, I will move agenda item 8.
Seconded.
Agreed, thank you. Move on to agenda items 9, 10 and 11. We're going to present these together as well. So these are applications P211582, P211962, P212031. That's Dundas Estates and Development, Gilbertfield Road and Cambus Lang. Pages 101 to 106 in your pack, and I'm going to ask Jane to present these together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, I will present these 3 items, 9, 10 and 11, jointly, as they all relate to the residential development by Dundas Estates at Gilbertfield Road and Cambus Lang, and cover the same planning matters. The site comprises former agricultural land bound by Gilbertfield Road to the south and Hamilton and Lightburn Road to the north, with Flemington Road to the east. There's a gas pumping station adjacent and a burn runs through the site. The site forms part of a wider residential development with Phase 2A currently under construction. All the sites benefit from extant planning permission, and the proposals seek to amend the layout and change the house types, only with a few layout changes as well. The planning background for each site is detailed in the table in section 3.3.1 of the reports. Planning application P211582 relates to Phase 2B, comprising a mix of 14 semi-detached and terrace units. Planning application P211962 relates to Phase 2C, comprising 26 detached units, and planning application P212031 relates to Phase 2D, comprising 53 houses, including a mix of detached, semi-detached and terrace units. There is proposed to be a landscape buffer around the unnamed watercourse, and landscaping is proposed throughout the site. All of the applications include a slightly repositioned suds pond layout to the north of the site, and the introduction of a culvert over the watercourse to replace a previously approved footbridge, and the installation of small-scale gas substations and realigned foot and cycleways throughout the site. Overall, the proposal generally aligns with the previous approvals, with the most significant changes being the amended house types proposed throughout. At Phase 2D, there is a modest increase in the number of units by 6 additional houses. The main access and internal road layouts would remain consistent with the earlier approvals, and parking provision is proposed accordingly. In terms of servicing, full technical drainage and culvert details have been provided, and an agreement in principle has been approved by the Council Structure Team, subject to seeking finalised design conditions. All consultees raise no objections, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the reports, which are the same for all 3 applications. There's no concern of flood risk on the site, and it will be subject to further roads construction consent. No additional affordable housing contributions are required in this instance due to the small-scale increase in unit, and education contributions will be sought for the additional units. 2 objections were received on item 2031, item 11 only, in regards to greenbelt erosion, road safety, traffic, drainage and loss of privacy, and the responses to these matters have been covered on pages 147 and 148 of the agenda papers. To summarise, however, the development lies within the Cambuslang and Rutherglen settlements, and it is an allocated site proposed for housing, meaning that there's no erosion of the greenbelt directly. Appropriate buffers will be introduced along the boundary to lessen any impact, and road safety, access, connectivity, flooding and drainage has been assessed in detail by technical consultees, and there's not considered to be any loss of privacy to the nearest houses out with the development site. Overall, it's considered the proposal complies with the relevant policies within the South Lanarkshire Council LDP in terms of its acceptable layout, siting and design and sustainable development location within an urban setting. It allows for an updated house type provision with a further housing mix in terms of size and style, and the proposed finishes are suitable for a large-scale modern housing development. The additional 6 units are not considered to give rise to significant additional infrastructure requirements on the site, and the overall effective land supply is considered to be met at this site. As mentioned, the full landscaping details and other technical matters will be covered through the conditions within the site, and these are further applications following on from the extant permissions, which establishes the principle of development at this site, and many of the considerations are carried forward. It's been subject to detailed consultation and is considered to be acceptable in terms of the policies within the local development plan. It's therefore recommended that each application, P211582, P211962 and P212031, be granted subject to the conditions and conclusion of the additional contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any comments? No, no comments. I'm going to move agenda item 9.
Seconded.
I go agreed. I move agenda item 10.
Seconded.
Agreed. And I will move agenda item 11.
Seconded.
Oh, agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Move to agenda item 12, application P220674, is pages 161 to 172 in your pack. And this is for an installation of a battery storage facility in Douglas Lanark. And I'll ask Tony to present.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application that's been made to the Scottish Government under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989, and it's for the installation of a battery storage facility on land that's known as Birk Hill. So as a result of that, the Council is a consultee in this case, with the final decision being made by the Energy Consents Unit within the Scottish Government. The application site, it's an area approximately 16 hectares in area. It lies to the west of the M74, and it's around 2.5 kilometres southeast of Lesmahago. It also lies 1.4 kilometres southeast of the Colburn electricity substation. The proposal involved the creation of up to 5 platforms, each of around 5,000 square metres, and within the platforms would be buildings up to 50 metres height, which would house the batteries. In land use terms, the site's within the rural area, but policy does say on new development a list of uses that are suitable, and that includes renewable energy proposals such as this. In terms of planning history, the application site forms part of a wider area that's been subject to various planning permissions dating back to the early 2000s, firstly for business and industrial use, and more recently for renewable energy related development. So, more recently, consent's been granted for a hydrogen production facility in this area and also for 2 turbines. And there's also a current application under consideration for a solar farm. So we're satisfied that the principle of major development of this nature at the site has been established and in accord with policy as well. The site's also within close proximity of Colburn substation, as I said, and within an area that has several large-scale wind farms. So therefore, that allows the minimum amount of transmission infrastructure that would be required to connect the battery proposals to the national grid. The proposed buildings are of a scale in keeping with others granted under the early consents, while the height of 50 metres is similar to that of an existing animal feed business currently operating immediately to the south of the site. The site in the context should also be read with other large-scale developments in the area and elsewhere along the M74. So it's therefore considered there wouldn't be an adverse effect on the amenity or landscape character of the area. There would also be no adverse effects on habitats and residential amenity, and none of the consultees have any objections to the proposals. So therefore recommending that the Scottish Government be advised that Council has no objections to this application. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tony. Any comments? The recommendations. This committee is asked to approve the following recommendations: that the Scottish Government is informed that South Lanarkshire Council has no objection to proposed installation of a battery storage facility under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989, and that the Head of Planning and Regulatory Services be authorised to undertake any discussions and further agreements of conditions if required with the Scottish Government. I'll move that.
Seconded.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item 13, application P220699. Change of use of accommodation in North Stand to assist accommodation at the New Douglas Park in Hamilton, and that is pages 173 to 182 in your pack. Bernard to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to existing office space within the North Stand of Hamilton Academicals Football Stadium at New Douglas Park to the north of Hamilton Town Centre. The applicant seeks detailed planning permission for a change of use of existing office accommodation in the North Stand to assisted living accommodation. The submitted supporting information entitled A Recovery and Wellbeing Village outlines the overall vision for a recovery and wellbeing village located within the stadium, which would be anchored around a 20-bed rehabilitation and recovery centre in the North Stand, in addition to 20 supported transition flats in the stadium grounds. It is only excuse me. It is only the proposed 20-bed rehabilitation and recovery centre that relates to this planning application, which would include 20 bedrooms with 10 additional rooms, along with day rooms, therapy rooms, cinema rooms and toilets. In policy terms, the site is identified as being within the general urban area, and the proposed use is considered to be acceptable in principle at this location. The consultation responses are summarised in section 4 of the report, and no objections have been received. 4 objections to the application were received, and the issues raised are summarised in section 5 of the report. Statutory consultees have raised no concerns in relation to the proposal, and the matters which have been raised in the representations submitted have been addressed in section 5. Under the terms of the Town Country Planning Act, all applications must be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless otherwise material considerations indicate otherwise. The concerns raised in the submitted representations do not constitute material planning considerations in the assessment of this planning application. It is considered that the application conforms with local plan policy and that the proposal raises no significant environmental or infrastructure issues. It will not impact on the physical appearance of the stadium building, and it is therefore recommended that the application for the change of use be granted, since the proposal is considered acceptable at this location. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. Any comments? Councillor Thompson online. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks very much, Chair. I can hear you now. To be honest, people approached me and I advised them it wasn't in my area, but as part of South Lanarkshire, I'd taken more what it says. And I take it then that if there's nobody came forward, there'll be no public meetings or anything like that. Any consultation will be carried out and there'll be no objections. Is that correct?
I think there is objections in your papers, Councillor Thompson, but I'll ask Bernard just to see if he can. But there's 4 objections. Bernard?
And they've all been dealt with, I'm asking, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Thompson, there were no objections from the consultations that we undertook, but from residents we got 4 representations submitted, but we are satisfied that the points raised have been addressed in the report.
That's fine. Thanks for the answer. Thanks, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Bernard, this might show my ignorance, but how did we conduct our consultation, please?
Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of a planning application, it's fairly standard that based on the red line boundary of the site, properties that are within a 20-metre distance of it would receive neighbour notification. For other applications, we also put an advert in the local press, and that's the standard way for notifying neighbours if they wish to object to a proposal, and they can submit comments within the required timescales.
Supplementary, Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, I'm aware that it's the vulnerable that are going to be living in these houses, is that right? And it's on a football site near the stadium, so there's going to be a lot of footfall for people going to the match. And the road isn't very, very good there because I travel it myself. So if people are in wheelchairs or using Zimmers, that road isn't very congenial to them actually walking up and down it. So is there anything in the paper? I've had difficulty this morning, Chair, in regards to having to see the papers. So I've only now just had them in my, been able to open them. So I do apologise for that if that's something that I would have seen in the papers.
Yeah, there's no objection from Rhodes. You want to come in, Bernard? Yeah. Okay. There is no objection from Rhodes, but I'll let Bernard just answer. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, in the north stand, which is part of the football stadium, there was office space which was vacated during the pandemic, and the club have just been looking at alternative uses. So the actual facilities that they are seeking consent, change of use, and they would intend to use are within the actual stadium building. In terms of roads, they have not raised any issues. There's adequate parking around the stadium. In terms of match days, the actual number of match days is probably relatively limited, as are the crowds. So the stadium itself is accessible for people who wish to walk to it and access it. So from that point of view, it's not considered that an issue would arise in terms of being able to access it or anything like that. And adequate parking is also available at the premises.
Thank you, Bernard. I think it's also good to see within the paper that the Health and Social Care Partnership had no objections either, and we're quite happy to go forward. So on that, there's no further comments. I'm going to move that we grant detailed planning permission.
Seconded.
Agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item 14, application P220498, demolition of the existing garage and shed and erection of new shed and gym in Sanford in Straven, and that is pages 183 to 196 in your pack, and Jane is going to present this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this proposal seeks the demolition of an existing garage and shed and the erection of a new shed and domestic gym at 20 Stonehouse Road in Sanford. The site relates to a 1.5-storey dwelling house situated within a small development which lies out with the adjacent Sanford Conservation Area. The application site for the shed and domestic gym is within the domestic garden curtilage of the property, where an existing shed is to be removed. Permitted development rights were removed at the time of the consent for this house was granted, meaning that permission is required for the proposal. This was in order to ensure that all development proposals within this area were appropriately designed and scaled to reflect the character of the area given its proximity to the conservation area. The proposed ancillary building is to be located generally on the footprint of the existing outbuildings, and following negotiations with the planning service, the design of the proposal has been amended to feature a pitched roof finished in slate effect materials and render to match the main house. This is considered to be more in keeping with the setting of the area and reflects the character of the adjacent conservation area. Originally, a mono-pitched roof design with cladding finish was proposed, with the building featuring an angled position in the site. In addition, a boundary hedge was originally to be removed. Following the design changes and retention of the hedge, the proposed development is considered acceptable. A tree survey was submitted in relation to an adjacent tree which is located within the conservation area, and conditions are attached to the report pertaining to its protection as included at the end. 6 letters of objection were received as outlined in the report, concerning mainly the accuracy of plans, scale of development, loss of sunlight, appearance, the use, environmental impact, access, noise, density, the impact on trees, and the impact on the conservation area. Overall, in terms of the policies outlined in the report, taking into consideration the concerns raised in the letters of objection, the proposed amended design sees the proposal set back off the rear boundary to ensure retention of the hedge. It features material finishes appropriate for the setting and character of the wider area, and is of a greater distance from the root protection area of the adjacent protected tree. The proposal is not considered to significantly impact on the neighbouring properties in terms of overshadowing or loss of light, given its orientation, scale and location. In addition, the existing boundary hedge to the rear, which is to be retained, is of a similar height to the proposal, and overall the massing is not considered to be overbearing. In terms of parking, the proposal would not impact on the availability of this at the site. Finally, a condition has also been included which prohibits commercial activity from the building, and the use is to be retained as a residential ancillary building. So in conclusion, it's considered it's appropriately designed and scaled and in compliance with the relevant policies within the local development plan, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions or comments? Nope. I will move that we grant detailed plan permission subject to conditions and based on the conditions I've attached.
Seconded.
All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 15, P220779, amendment to plan and permission P201667 to remove Madrid House type remix plots and addition of garden rooms to 20 plots in Strilla Hill and Larkhall. And that's pages 197 to 210 in your pack, and Bernard will present this item. Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to an area of land located at the edge of the Strother Hill Industrial Estate off Carlisle Road to the south of Larkhall Town Centre. The site is mainly vacant, with construction works underway for a residential development which was previously granted planning permission. The site was previously occupied by the former Dax Simpson warehouse and is irregular in shape and mostly flat. The applicant seeks consent for an amendment to a previous planning approval to remove the Madrid house type, remix plots and add garden rooms to 20 plots. The overall residential development previously approved was for a total of 128 dwellings, and the current proposal is for the same number, but with a change from a mix of 106 detached and 22 semi-detached to a mix of 102 detached and 26 semi-detached properties. The proposed houses would be 2 stories in height, finished with concrete roof tiles, rendered walls, UPVC windows and doors. Car parking would be provided on driveways located to the front and side of the dwellings, with appropriate spaces provided. In terms of the local plan, the site is designated as a proposed housing site in the adopted local plan, and therefore the principle of residential development is considered acceptable at this location. There was one consultation undertaken with the Council's Roads team, and they've got no objection to the proposal. There were no objections received or representation submitted relative to the application. Overall, it is considered that the amended layout for the development is acceptable and that it meets the main standards set out in the Council's residential design guide, particularly in relation to window-to-window distances, garden depths, amenity open space and car parking. The proposed houses are of a modern design with a suitably high standard of external finishing materials, and it's considered that the development will be in keeping with existing residential development in the surrounding area. Areas of landscaping are proposed throughout the development, and the landscaping scheme submitted with the application is considered acceptable. The proposed amendments to the layout have been assessed by the Council's Roads Service, who are satisfied that the layout meets their requirements and that the proposal raises no access, parking or road safety issues. Overall, the proposal is considered to be acceptable, and it is recommended that the application be granted subject to conditions. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. Any comments, questions? Councillor Frame, online. Councillor Frame.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, I had actually frozen, I had to rejoin again, so I apologise if this was brought up when I was out. My question is for when we're bringing up for the houses ourselves, have we looked into the actual education side of it? If these are going to be family homes and our schools are already set at maximum, so what are we going to put in place then for the kids for schooling then, please? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frey. I'll bring in Bernard just in a second, but remember this is an amendment to the planning permission, so they're already, we're not adding any more houses here. It's actually, that's already been passed. Right. So that'll be, but I'll ask Bernard just to confirm. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair mentioned, obviously this is just an amendment to a previously approved scheme, but when the original development was approved, there was a legal agreement put in place and it requires education contributions to be paid. And that will be for the non-denominational and the denominational secondary school in the area, and also their associated feeder primaries and nurseries. So where there is a need, an identified project, the money, once this development proceeds, would go towards the requirements of education.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lambie.
Hi, Chair, thanks. Just a very quick one. With the addition of all these garden rooms to the house types and the resultant increase in area, does that mean there needs to be a change to the CIL payments or the Section 106 agreements? Thanks.
I'll let Bernard answer that one.
No, it wouldn't be based on the garden rooms. It would just be based on the number of units within the overall development, and there's no change to the overall number is remaining at 128 as per the original approval for the site.
Thank you, Bernard. Any further suggestions or comments? No. I'm going to move we amend the planning permission.
Seconded.
All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 16 is P220923, erection of 19 dwellings with infrastructure, open space road improvements and associated works at Newlands Road in East Kilbride, and I'm going to ask Ian to present.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, it's for the erection of 19 dwellings with infrastructure, open space and road improvements, and that's to land 35 metres to the north of Trunnell Hill, which is at Newlands Road in East Kilbride. So the proposed development is located near the southern edge of East Kilbride and covers an area of approximately 0.95 hectares. The site, which includes a gradual upward slope from the southwest to the northeast, comprises the site of a former residential dwelling house at Trunnell Hill, which has previously been demolished, along with its surrounding grounds. The site is bounded to the north, south and east by open space areas which form part of the East Kilbride Green Network, and to the west by Newlands Road, with a residential development opposite forming part of the East Kilbride Community Growth Area, and vehicular access is taken from Newlands Road. So applicants are proposing detailed planning permission for the erection of a residential development of 19 dwelling houses comprising 18 semi-detached dwellings, 1 detached dwelling. There'll be access improvements, footpath provision and landscaping, and these will be undertaken as part of the development works. In addition, vehicular and pedestrian access to the site from Newlands Road is proposed, and the proposed dwelling houses have been designed in a townhouse style to account for the existing slope and the general preference to retain substantial green space areas. So the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan identifies the site as a housing site, so the proposal is consistent with that zoning. Planning permission was previously granted for the formation of 12 house plots within the site in July 2015, and subsequent permission was sought for the erection of 12 again in 2018 and also in 2021. However, these applications were withdrawn after some concerns were raised regarding design. However, the council has remained in discussions with the applicant, and this current application that's before you is the result of those discussions. There was a number of consultations carried out, none of whom have raised any issues. Similarly, there's no letters of representations been received. As I say, in terms of the assessment, the site is included within, is identified as a housing site. It's noted that the applicants submitted previous applications and concerns were previously raised regarding the extent of the footprint of the development and the development of the slope. There was also the applicant advised that there was constraints posed by the levels on site, and as such the applicants chose to withdraw their application and have put forward their current proposal, which allows for the 19 units on site, and it allows for an appropriate roads access as well. In terms of the road safety considerations, it noted that the applicants will take some road improvement works on Newlands Road in addition to the extension of the existing footpath on Newlands Road to the south. Off-street parking will also be provided. The Council's Environmental Services have confirmed that they've got no objections subject to appropriate dust management on site. In terms of amenity and open space provisions, it's noted that there's a significantly reduced footprint of the development relative to the proposals previously brought forward, and this allows for an ample landscaped area. Taking all of the above into account, it's considered that the detailed proposals comply with the adopted local development plan, both in design terms, climate change, open space provision, and in terms of the proposal of housing. Therefore, it's recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the attached conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions or comments? Nope. I will move that we grant detailed planning permission, subject to conditions.
Seconded.
All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 17 is application P220927, erection of 12 flats with associated vehicle access, parking and landscaping at Low Waters Miners Welfare and Social Club in Hamilton. And I will ask Bernard to present this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to an area of land located in Allness Street on the southern side of Hamilton. The site has been in use as a bowling green associated with the adjoining Low Waters Miners Welfare and Social Club for the best part of 100 years. The site extends to approximately 0.25 hectares and is essentially square-shaped and mainly flat with relatively level access to adjoining properties and roads. This is a detailed application for the erection of 12 flats with associated vehicular access, parking and landscaping. The proposal comprises 2 blocks of 6 cottage flats arranged over 2 floors, half of which would be wheelchair accessible. All of the flats would be 2-bedroom dwellings. The proposed blocks are of contemporary design incorporating traditional ridged roofs, finished in grey concrete roof tiles with solar panels. The exterior walls would be finished in a mix of buff facing brick and grey zinc style cladding. The proposal has been designed to reflect the established scale and massing of buildings surrounding the site, and there would also be a courtyard parking area to the front of the properties with a total of 27 spaces with access from Allness Street. In terms of local plan policy, the application site is designated as a proposed housing site, and the principle of residential development is therefore supported at this location. The consultation responses are summarised in section 4 of the report, and there have been no objections received. In terms of representations, there were 2 letters which objected to the proposal, and the issues raised are responded to in section 5 of the report. In general land use and policy terms, the principle of residential development at this location is considered to be acceptable as the application site is designated for residential use in the adopted local plan. The proposal involves the reuse of a former bowling green, which raised no adverse comments from Sports Scotland in relation to the loss of outdoor sports facilities, and who have also advised that the proposal would satisfy the terms of Scottish planning policy. In terms of the detailed design of the development, in this instance, it is considered that the proposed layout for the development is acceptable and meets the standards set out in the Council's Residential Design Guide. The proposed two-storey dwellings are of a modern design with a suitably high standard of external finishing materials, and it is considered that the development will not be out of keeping with the existing residential development surrounding the area. It's considered that the buildings have been designed and positioned with the site sufficiently to ensure that they should have no significant adverse impact on any adjacent existing dwellings in terms of loss of light, overshadowing, and likewise in terms of overlooking and loss of privacy. Overall, the development at this location is considered to be acceptable, and it's recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions.
Thank you, Bernard. Any questions or comments? Councillor Toner.
Thanks, Chair. There's just a few points in when it comes to this area. Again, it's in my ward, and I know the area well. So the Procast actually own the building next to the Old Miners Welfare Social Club, and they're building on the bowling green to the left of that building. I'm concerned about the amount of traffic and the cars. I know there is car parking spaces available, but some of the flats are going to open onto Elliott Crescent, which is the street at the back. Elliott Crescent is a nightmare of a road to drive down and to park down, and there's also a community hall at the back of it, just at the corner of that site. And when I looked at the plans, it looks like it's really tight to the back of that building, and there's fire exits and things on the back of the Low Waters Hall and on the actual the Old Miners Social Club as well, that will then be looking onto where this site is. I'm not clear exactly where the buildings are and where the car parking is going to be. I know it's a square site, but I'm not sure where they're actually wanting to build the actual buildings there. There's also a concern as well about the disabled access to the Miners Welfare Social Club. As Procast are using the building at the moment as offices, and there is access at the front of it, which is an entirely separate thing. However, the entrance to the Cadsall Welfare opens onto the bowling club, and they've had to put a ramp and things like that in place there, and I'm just wondering if that is going to affect any of the building works that's proposed on the bowling green.
Thank you. I'll bring Bernard in first, and then we'll maybe ask Fraser just to comment on the parking.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, if you go to page, I think it's 233, there's a map of the site in the documents, and if you're looking at it, the street to the south is Altness Street, and the vehicular access would be off of Altness Street, and it would the two blocks, if you like, of 6 flats, they would be on the left-hand side as you're looking at it on your screen just now.
Okay.
So that's where the buildings will be located, and the car park area will be between the buildings and the other buildings which are out with the site.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly?
You know what I mean?
Councillor Donnelly, you're live.
Sorry, sorry, I do apologise for that comment. Right, sorry about the domestic. It was just, I have been up to this site, I did frequent the social club, and I was a bit concerned, like Councillor Toner, is there any way that the ramp for disabled access into the social club, can that be included in this application as, what would the language be, and you know, an added on here?
I don't know, if Bernard, I'm a bit confused. Yeah, I'm a bit confused with what you're looking for. Can you just clarify, you're looking for the disabled access? Can you just clarify what you're...
It's disabled access to the social club. What happened is Procrast took over this building and the disabled access to the social club is at the front, which they now have. Meaning that the social club does not have a disabled access and they're having to investigate fitting a ramp. And they are letting, the CADS welfare are letting the building from Procast. So I was just wondering, could we add that Procrast take the cost on of installing the disabled access to the social club?
I don't think that's part of the material planning consent. I'll ask Bernard just, and then maybe Monica from a legal perspective, but I don't think that's within our gift to do that, so.
Right.
Bernard?
Thank you, Chair. Just from what you're describing, that would be out with the application site. So this application that's before us is for the 12 flats and associated parking per se, but the buildings, I'm presuming you're referring to the sort of pavilion which is to the east of the application site, and the ground that's out with this application site, and I don't think that's something that we could possibly do to, you know, if they are looking to lease out a facility and there's certain access arrangements or requirements for them to do that, then they would need to do that. And also I note that if it's Procast that are leasing out that building, they're also the applicant here. So I don't think it would be appropriate for anything to be done through planning, but if there was a need for an access ramp to be provided and they needed either additional space or they needed to accommodate it, then they have the power as the applicant and to do so, and if they own the building as well.
Thank you, Bernard. I don't think, Monica, I don't think you need to come in anything there. I'll go to Councillor Thompson. Councillor Bert Thompson.
Right, thanks very much, Chair. During my time when the Equal Opportunity Committee this came up, am I right in saying that every new build has to have disability access for people that require it? It's actually a requirement by law, is that correct?
Yes, but I'll give Bernard will be able to give you a bit better explanation.
Thank you, Chair. There's obviously a requirement under the building regulations in terms of depending what it is that you're doing, but this specific application, it's for 2 blocks of 6 flats, and in each block the 3 ground floor flats have been designed to be wheelchair accessible.
That's very encouraging. Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
And I'll bring in Councillor Toner. I'm going to bring this to a close.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, just to clarify, Bernard, what I think Councillor Donnelly was saying was the actual building, the miners' welfare building that is adjacent to the site that we're talking about. There is, and they're obviously touching because they're owned by the same people. So the CADSO welfare, their entrance is on the border between the development site and it's on that edge of the building. So they're having to put in a ramp that is possibly encroaching onto the bowling green site so that they can gain access to the social club. So I think that's just where Councillor Donnelly was coming from, just to clarify, just to make it a wee bit easier for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tona. I did see Councillor Donnelly's hand up, but she's away again. So if there's no further comments, I will move that we grant detailed plan permission subject to conditions.
Seconded.
All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 18 is the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 support and planning guidance on community infrastructure assessment, and that is in pages 235 to 264 in your pack, and Tony is going to present.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update committee of the outcome of a public consultation exercise on the draft support and planning guidance on community infrastructure assessment, and also to seek committee approval for the revised SPG as set out in the appendix to the report. So a report was presented to the committee in February this year, seeking approval for a draft. This followed a review of the existing supplementary guidance on this topic. And following approval, committee public consultation was carried out for a 6-week period, and the outcome of that is described in section 6 of the report. 6 letters were received. None of them raised any issues about the principles established in the draft document. We have gone back separately as well to a couple of the community councils on some of the detailed matters they raised. So in terms of the report before you today, section 4 sets out in a bit of detail the legislative and policy context of what we're talking about. Section 75 allows councils to enter into a planning obligation, and including a requirement to make payments to regulate or restrict the use or development of land. We also have a government circular on planning obligations, and an important element there is the circular sets out 5 tests that a planning obligation must meet to be lawful, and they're described in detail in the report also. I think it's worth pointing out the developer contributions are not like other funds that are available for local communities to bid for. They have to be sought in line with government policy, and they must directly relate to the impact the development would have on an area. It's also not appropriate for developers to be asked to pay to address existing shortfalls in the provision of community facilities or services, or address defects such as structural repairs to existing buildings. So when we looked at the existing guidance, we made a number of changes to that document. I'll go through 3 of the main key ones that were made in the draft document, which continue through to this one before you today. The first one relates to the threshold whereby we seek contributions. Under the existing guidance, it's 20 units or more. We felt that figure was probably too high. It doesn't reflect the impact smaller developments can have on existing infrastructure and service provision. So we looked at that and the approach that other councils use, and we recommended last time that the threshold be reduced to 5 units. That was agreed by committee, and we're continuing with that proposal in the revised document. The one exception to this is in relation to affordable housing from private house builders. The high-level policy in the LDP on affordable housing states that we'll only be seeking affordable housing provision within sites for developments of 20 units or more. So that sets the context on this issue, and under current legislation we would have to change the entire local plan or address the entire local development plan to change that figure. So we're going to leave that figure at 20 units as it stands, but we will address that as we come to prepare the next local development plan. Second major change compared in terms of the changes to the existing guidance relates to the seeking of contributions for community facilities such as sports centres, libraries and community halls. At the moment we have a fairly arbitrary figure of £1,500 a house. We've actually, to replace that, we've developed a methodology for, first of all, trying to find or determine if there's an impact of new development on a facility, and then working out what the cost of that would be to either extend or adapt that facility or even create a new one. So that's going to be a much more bespoke approach than we use at the moment. The final one I wanted to speak about was in terms of active travel. For the first time, the guidance makes reference to seeking contributions in relation to active travel opportunities. So this reflects emerging national planning policy that sees 20-minute neighbourhoods as a means of achieving compact and connected neighbourhoods to ensure people meet the majority of their daily needs within a reasonable walk, wheel or cycle of their homes. Members who attended the awareness session on last Monday on the development contribution process will have had a discussion at the end about the, in terms of development contributions for public transport. I advised during that the council can't insist that a bus operator provide a service. So while that remains correct, having reflected on that and having spoken to Rhodes colleagues, we do ask for a transport assessment or transport statement for most housing applications over 50 units. And through that process, we can ask the developer to consider public transport. So through that process, we often find that on smaller sites, there may already be a bus service serving the local area, but we can seek contributions to provide new or improved infrastructure. So, for example, bus shelters or improved lighting, and that would make public transport more attractive. On the larger sites, we can and we have asked, as we heard earlier, for developers to subsidise a bus service for a limited period. That's to allow the bus service to become established, which in turn gives the operator an idea of whether there's long-term demand and keep it running. I would caveat that though to say, if the developer can't reach agreement with an operator, it's not something we can insist on. I'd also say that if the service is shown to be non-effective without the continuing subsidy, then it's likely the service might be stopped. So what I want to do though is to make that position clearer, a bit more clearer in the SPG. So I'm asking for two changes or two small additions to be made to the SPG in the appendix. So I'm suggesting first of all that the current subheading on page 254 of the papers be extended to read public transport and active travel. In addition, I'm also proposing that a new second paragraph be added under that heading, and that would read, where the transport assessment or transport statement identifies a need for public transport provision and or improvements to serve the new development, contributions will be sought. This could involve the developer subsidising a new bus service for a period to be agreed, or that new or improved infrastructure is provided, for example, bus shelters, improved lighting, etc., to make public transport more attractive, or a combination of both of these. So, just to round this off, other than a small number of minor updates being made to the proposed document to provide clarification or include definitions on certain matters, but overall, the general principles of the guidance remains unchanged from the original draft. We're therefore recommending that the supporting planning guidance attached as the appendix to the report is approved, together with the additional wording I described to be included, and thereafter it will be published on the Council's website. And if approved, the SPG will become a material consideration on plan applications and would be and become the Council's adopted position. And back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. And yes, I agree to the change of the wording as per our discussion prior to the meeting. So I'm happy with that to be added in on the SPG, and that obviously that when it's updated we can get that back round about to all the members as well. Can I just make sure everybody's happy with the changes? Agreed. I'll bring in Councillor David Shearer.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
Can I say I welcome this report as a step forward, a step in the right direction. However, I still believe it does not cover fully what many members would hope it covers. And I think there may be a need for primary legislation. Where there are developments, it not only affects council facilities like education, housing, roads, social work, but it also affects public transport, which is not under our control because we are not a transport authority. Also affects health provision, and the NHS in the area cover that. There is a need, I would say, that in the future, all infrastructure is considered as part of the bigger plan when we are looking at developments, because every housing estate will have an impact on all these facilities, not just on council-run facilities. And I accept, and Tony no doubt will come back and say, I only have control over council matters. That's correct, Tony, but I do think there is a need to see the bigger picture, and that there may well be a need for primary legislation so that it will be, all infrastructure will be covered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shearer, and I couldn't agree more, especially from an NHS point of view and dental services, etc. The pressure that puts in these services as well. I did speak to Tony after the session last Monday, and he assured me that there is some more dialogue with NHS Lanarkshire, but I still feel your nervousness as well, Councillor Shearer. I'll bring in Tony, who's just going to comment on that.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of what you were saying there, Councillor Shearer, good news, I suppose. The planning system's going through quite a transition at the moment. You might remember a report to committee a while back just explaining the outcome of the new provisions in the Planning Act 2019. One of the aspects is when it comes to preparing our next local development plan, we have to take the effect of new development on health provision, health services into account, which is a new requirement for us, which I'm sure everybody will agree is good. There's also in the Act the ability for the government to bring forward further regulations on what's called an infrastructure levy, which will go significantly beyond what we ask contributions for at the moment. It will include drainage and sustainable transport, and it will include health facilities. The government haven't brought forward those regulations yet, and there is a sunset clause, so-called, in the Act that says it has to be brought forward within 7 years of 2019. So we'll certainly keep your members updated on any progress on that. And finally, just on this matter, I've brought a report to committee before on the proposed National Planning Framework 4, which is the government's proposed national spatial planning policy to 2045. That's going to bring significant change to both how we prepare what we have to include in local development plans, but also how we assess planning applications. And one of the aspects of NPF4 is one of the central planks of it is what's called an infrastructure first approach. So before we allocate any sites in the LDP, we have to be sure that infrastructure in its wider sense can be addressed and is available to serve that development. So quite a few things coming up in the near future, Councillor, and we will bring those aspects to committee for noting and for information as well. Thanks, Chair.
David, do you have any supplementaries?
No, Chair, but again, I would welcome it. It's a move in the right direction, but it seems, as always in planning issues, the movement is terribly, terribly slow. A snail at the gallop moves quicker than planning regulations and changes. These infrastructure considerations are needed now. They're not needed in 7 years' time. They're needed today because we are all facing issues on health, transport, education, drainage, you name it, it's needed now. But I welcome that it's a move in the right direction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shearer, and I agree it is a move in the right direction. Still a good bit of work to go to make sure that infrastructure is able to cope with the difficulties of big, large building sites. Just before we move on to agenda item 19, I don't have any items of urgent business at item 20. So for those who have declared an interest at items 19, Councillor Horsham, Councillor Mars and Councillor Lambie, you are free to leave the meeting. There's no need for you to come back because I don't have any urgent items And after this item is finished, and then we will move to close. So thank you for your attendance. And I'll just make sure that those online, Councillor Mars and Councillor Lambie, have also left the meeting. Okay, thank you. So we'll move to item 19, which is pages 265 to 324 in your pack, and it's the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, Support and Planning Guidance, Hagshaw Energy Cluster Development Framework, and Tony is going to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to inform committee of the work that's being carried out to prepare supporting planning guidance comprising a development framework for the Hagshaw Energy Cluster, seek committee approval for the proposed SPG that's set out in the appendix to the report, and then a carrying out of a 6-week period of public consultation. In 2019, the Council was invited by NatureScot, along with East Ayrshire Council, to take part in a new project involving the piloting of an innovative approach to renewable energy development, to explore how a more strategic, joined-up approach to renewable energy development could take place that would achieve greater and multiple benefits. The project in this case centres around Hagshaw Hill, which sits in the Douglas Valley, and it's an area well established as a wind farm location. The original Hagshaw wind farm, constructed in 1985, was Scotland's first commercial wind farm. Since that time, a series of wind farms have been erected in the locality, involving a number of different developers and landowners. And together, the operational wind farm developments in that area provide a generation capacity of 584 megawatts. There is potential over the next few years for proposals for the repowering of existing wind farms, which involves the replacement of the original turbines with new larger turbines. And in fact, we've already granted consent of committee previously for the repowering of Hagshaw Hill as that comes to the end of its life, but also for possible extensions to existing developments, and also the co-location of other renewable energy technologies such as hydrogen generation and solar energy. And so that makes Hagshaw an ideal area for the focus for this work. The framework before members today, it's intended to set out at a very strategic level the opportunities for the cluster in terms of maximising output, but at the same time maximising social, economic and environmental benefits from this type of development, and also minimising any negative environmental impacts. This is the first time such an approach has been used in Scotland, and can be seen as an important development in the drive towards net zero carbon emissions by 2045. Some community engagement has already been carried out on this concept. Over 80% of the respondents supported the more collaborative approach to any development. The vision is underpinned by 6 interrelated themes. These are listed in the report. They look at, and among other things, connecting communities and making them more resilient, enhancing nature, developing a strong identity of heritage, people and place, and also encouraging inclusive, sustainable growth as well as outdoor recreation. A number of opportunities and projects have been identified in the framework. These are no by means exhaustive, but they include, for example, a coordinated approach to habitat management, enhanced connectivity between communities through the enhancement of existing and the creation of new active travel links, the integration of alternative technologies to support and complement wind energy, and also new infrastructure for recreational facilities. An action plan is also under preparation, which will identify lead partners, funding opportunities, and the potential timelines for the opportunities set out in the framework. So we're recommending that the draft development framework set out in the appendix is approved. If it is approved, it will be published and made available for public comment later in the year for 6 weeks. Following a consultation period, should no significant changes be proposed to be made to the draft document, we're suggesting that the guidance be adopted by South Lanarkshire Council and also East Ayrshire without coming back to committee. However, if significant changes are needed, we'd obviously come back and report those to you for further approval. Once approved, the SPG will become a material consideration in the determining of applications alongside the adopted local development plan. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions or comments? Nope. We're asked to approve the following recommendations in your pack. I'll move those.
Seconded.
All agreed? Agreed. Thank you all for your attendance, and thank you to all the officers for keeping it relevant and for your questions today. It's very much appreciated. Have a safe journey and a good day. Thank you.